This is Security Weekly, for security professionals, by security professionals. Broadcasting live from G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island, it's the show where we talk security vendors and aren't afraid to name names. It's Enterprise Security Weekly.
I'm a tiger. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Enterprise Security Weekly. I don't know how this is going to go because Paul's not here this week, but we're just going to give it a shot.
Even if you've got experience in security, you can benefit from going to somewhere and learning about that bug again. Wearing my tactical turtleneck just for Mr. John Strand, who is on the lines via Skype. John, welcome to the program.
I'm wearing the tactical fleece as well, Paul. This is
Excellent.
A fully, completely, and utterly tactical show.
Are you worried about PCI compliance? Does your development team understand or care about security? Are you ready to face a breach of your customer's sensitive data? See the worst that can happen before it does. Black Hills Information Security can help you help management see the future. Email consulting@blackhillsinfosec.com to find out how a web application penetration test can mitigate the risk before you go live. Improve the efficiency and effectiveness of your security operations with DF Labs security orchestration, automation, and response technology. Automate threat containment, orchestrate incident response, and measure operational performance with DF Labs IncMan SOAR platform. Leverage your current security resources to minimize incident resolution time, maximize analyst efficiency, increase the number of incidents handled, and reduce overall risk. IncMan SOAR acts as a force multiplier, enabling your security team to do more with less. Streamline the full incident response lifecycle automation process today. Keep your cybersecurity incidents under control with DF Labs. Visit dflabs.com/security weekly and request to see IncMan SOAR live in action. Stop attackers from domain credential theft and lateral movement with a 99% success rate by using artificial intelligence to control the attacker's perception of the environment. Javelin Networks is the world's first endpoint intrusion containment platform to protect domain networks. Javelin detects targeted attacks and breaches by obfuscating Active Directory, domain controllers, domain identities, domain credentials, and all domain resources. It only takes one compromised machine to jeopardize the entire organization. Don't be a victim. Visit javelin-networks.com and request a demo of AD Protect today. And now it looks like we're recording. Hey, hi everyone. We are here at Source Conference in Boston, and this is really weird because I can't hear myself. Normally I do a show, I can hear myself.
I know, it's
I guess I
strange,
can still hear myself, but not in headphones, which is kind of weird.
You don't have that delayed reaction.
Yeah. Thomas Fischer is here with us. He is no stranger to the show. And you gave a talk today at Source Boston.
Yeah, I did. Thanks, Paul. So you sat at the end rather than the beginning.
I did. I missed the beginning where you told me what GDPR stood for and how to spell GDPR.
So G, D, P, and R.
R. All right. I got it.
R standing for regulation, which means law.
What does GDPR stand for?
General Data Protection Regulation.
Okay.
Not privacy. Like many people talk about privacy, but it's not privacy.
What's the biggest misconception with GDPR, in your opinion?
For my point of view, the biggest misconception is definitely treating it as a compliance exercise. Mostly because there is a lot of people are building this whole thing around this mythic May 25th date, where May 25th being the date that it becomes enforceable. So when the data protection authorities can come in and audit you and see if you've protected the data. So they're building all these plans with having all these things ready for the 25th of May when it's actually a long-term commitment. I've heard CISOs going, oh, I'm really busy because I have to get everything ready for the 25th of May. It's like, what happens afterwards, right? Because one of the founding things inside the whole GDPR is that you have to be able to answer subject access requests. So
on an ongoing basis.
On an ongoing basis.
Not just on May 25th.
Yeah, exactly. And you have to be able to demonstrate that you've protected the data from now until whenever, right? And as long as you're storing it.
It's like any other. It is similar to compliance in that you are either compliant or not compliant at any given moment in time. And so, like, when you have your PCI audit as an example, you might be compliant, but what happens tomorrow? Like,
yeah, exactly, yeah.
Who's checking to see if you're compliant? But you might get a request from, what did you call that? A
subject access request.
Yeah.
So there's a couple of definitions. So a subject access request, there's I think it's was it seven, no 8 of them. So it's basically the rights that have been given to the data subject, which is the person. So a person being anybody that lives in the EU, essentially, specifically EU citizens, but it extends to EU residents as well. And so the subject access request is essentially like if I were to call your help desk and say, Paul, there's a problem with my user account. It's like, tell me what my user account information is. Mm-hmm. And that's essentially a subject access request. And so one of the things that the feeling I'm getting is that companies are just not ready to answer those, right? They just don't have the the capacity. Number one. Number two, they just don't have the procedures in place.
Now, when we talk about fines and like getting in trouble for not being compliant or in accordance with the GDPR guidelines, standards,
regulation. It's a regulation.
So, they're not going to impose fines out of the gate. In other words, the first person to make a request, if I can't answer that, I may get in trouble. But I guess my point is like the regulatory body isn't going to come to me and like say, hey, you owe this fine now. Like there's likely going to be some negotiation process where I'm like, yes, I will comply, but I need X amount of time in order to be in compliance.
Yeah, no. I think the way that we're seeing it right now is that it's going to be more about your ability to respond, right? So as a subject, I'm going to call you and say, give me all the information you have on me.
Yeah.
You have 30 to 40 days to respond. If you don't respond, I can go off and contact the Data Protection Authority and say, Paul hasn't responded to my subject access request. Can you go find out why? Right? And can you do the investigation? If you respond, it's okay. Now, you won't get investigated. But let's say I don't like the response that you give me. Right? I feel that there's something missing. You're only giving me part of the information. Mm-hmm. I can then go back and complain to the DPA and say, look, he's hiding something. You need to investigate. Now, the DPA, there's two things. The GDPR says that it's not about the fines. It's about helping companies understand what they need to do in terms of data protection and helping them understand how to do data protection properly at the beginning, right? It's work. It's working together. It's not about coming in and saying, oh, you messed up. Here's, I'm going to hit you with a 10 million euro fine. It's not that. And a lot of the DPAs have said, no, our goal is to help build a process where companies understand what they need to do. If they are failing in certain domains, we won't fine straight away. We'll help them correct the problem. Mm-hmm. And if they don't correct the problem, and if the problem continues, then we'll start to look at fining. There's practicality to that, right? Because you don't want to impose fines when a company might not understand what or didn't realize that they were doing something with personal data, right? So you need to work with the companies to make them better understand, and that's one of the things. And that's why it's kind of like, that's why I don't like calling this compliance, because on the 26th of May, unless you're a certain companies, the DPAs aren't going to come to your office and do the audit, right?
Right.
I mean, there is a provision. There's not even a provision for auditing in the GDPR. It's essentially there is a provision for a certification process, but the certification process is more like an ISO certification process, right? So you've built your processes, procedures. You can demonstrate that you're doing data protection, and you get a certification. But those have to be implemented by the local governments, and nobody's really done anything like that yet. I think. The Netherlands and Germany have that in the plans. They've got working documentation to have a certification body, but there isn't really any certification right now as it stands.
Tom, did you see any other talks today that were of particular interest? I mean, other than mine, obviously.
Did I see any talks? Actually, I saw one earlier on DevOps and security.
Oh, Apollo.
Yeah, I think it was Apollo. Yeah.
We're gonna have Apollo sit down and talk about his talk likely next.
Yeah, I like the concept because I mean.
So you did like 2 DevOps talks because my talk was largely around DevOps too.
That's kind of I'm kind of playing around in that domain as well now. Yeah, because a lot of companies talk about DevOps, but
sure.
The thing that I'm interested in, what was interesting in Apollo is the aspect of threat modeling, right? Mm-hmm. Describing the threat. Now, one of the comments I actually did make to Apollo was that I think we need to step it up one level higher, because a lot of threat modeling that we do today in vulnerability assessments and risk assessments, and if you look at some of the OWASP modeling as well, it's all about the actual attacker doing something to your information, right, or to your systems. What I would like to see more is threat modeling starting at the business level, so looking at a business threat, right? So if this happens to my credit card payment processing system, I can no longer, generate money, and it will affect my business in this way, right? Mm-hmm. So looking at that level of threat modeling, and then working downstream and making sure that translates into more specific things that DevOps understands, or the developers understand, but the IT security teams understand, because we still have this problem. We're disassociated from the business, right?
Yeah.
As a lot of security teams and a lot of security professionals are disassociated from the business, and I find that sad, because we're working in silos when security should be fundamentally an enabler of everything that we do in a business, right? It should be.
Yeah, I think what you're really saying, Tom, is going deeper into your threat modeling, not just saying this could happen, and if it does, has this impact to the IT operations, or an attacker could get here or there, but taking it even further, how does that impact the business?
Yeah.
And not just like, well, that's bad but like really coming up with hard facts and numbers to say this is how it could potentially impact the business. If it affects this supply chain, we lose this amount of money every day that we have this problem until we fix it.
Actually, earlier I was talking with Michael and the guy from Ativo, and we were talking about something like that with regards to WannaCry. Why was WannaCry such a big news flare? It's because it actually impacted something that was physically demonstrable and affected millions of people, right?
Right.
Which was basically the denial of service on some of the National Health Service in the UK.
Which is interesting, because when we talk about crypto mining, what effect does that have on the organization? Sometimes very little. Sometimes very little. Sometimes users will complain that they can't do their job, right, because they have no CPU cycles left. Right.
So we don't look, when we do our threat, a lot of times when we do all that threat modeling, we don't look at that aspect, right? We look more at, like, if a hacker hits, let's say if a malicious person breaks my system, I have to do something to my system, right? But there's no real thought, there's an afterthought about the business. And what countermeasures, or what alternate solutions can we propose to the business to be able to continue to work? Because that's the whole problem, is that we rely so much on technology today. It's like, how can we do something without technology and carry on providing the services or providing our offering? Right.
So you mentioned Apollo's talk. I want to bring Apollo on the show because I want to do a lot of short interviews. We can bring you back later.
No problem.
We'll bring you back after, and we'll do trivia today. Are you here tomorrow as well?
I'm here tomorrow as well.
Okay.